Welcome to day 8 of National Podcast Post Month here on the Odd Dad Out podcast, where we are currently telling all about my recent trip to Disneyland, one painstakingly long stretch at a time, because I've got 30 days to fill with content, and let's make a week of our trip to Disney, shall we? I don't know. I just needed something to talk about, and I needed to talk about this. So anyway, if you haven't already listened, yesterday I talked about kind of how we managed to afford a trip to Disney because we're a regular working family with 4 kids, and the economy kind of sucks right now, and going to Disney is fucking expensive. So if you care to listen to that less substantial part of the story, go ahead and back to that before you get to this. So now we're on travel. And you're wondering, why would I talk about, I legitimately could talk about the travel element of this, because I had to make a lot of preparations for this. Because, well, it's not especially far. We're used to road trips. We have driven back to visit family in South Texas some 15, 20 times. So we're used to long car trips. A drive to Anaheim from Phoenix is about 6 hours. Not a big deal for us. But we used to have a minivan. We no longer do. So we had to make some modifications. I actually had to go and buy a roof rack for my car so that, or it's an SUV, but I had to go buy a roof rack so that we would actually have storage space for suitcases and things like that. And, you know, we have a backpack that we always travel with. We even use it for Taekwondo tournaments. It's got a like a lunchbox refrigerator, like a insulated section that we always keep drinks in, and which became my like gear for the whole trip, because that was where all of our snacks were and our first aid kit and all necessary things like our backup battery packs and chargers and things like that. So all that. But I had to have a roof rack to carry all this shit. And so, you know, months of planning and buying this and installing this and doing this and mounting this to the car and making sure this fits, doing all the things for a 6-hour drive. I mentioned I'm used to driving a 20-hour trip from Phoenix to San Antonio, Texas. This 6 hours was so much more miserable than that. And I don't know why, other than basically from Phoenix until you get into like Anaheim proper, just sucks. It's boring as shit. It is some boring ass desert. There's very little in the way of towns in that area. And it is just empty. Bah. But what's really funny, and if you're somebody who's traveled across state lines across the US anytime, it is very obvious when you cross a state line. And it's really kind of funny when you're driving from Arizona into California, because anybody who's crossed state lines, you notice the roads change because suddenly it's a different state maintaining roads. And so road textures change and things like that. The roads immediately change. But we also looked out at the like environment and realized the desert in California does not look anything like the desert in Arizona. And we're like, why are these mountains look furry? And they were more like dunes with moss or like that shrubbery, like low grasses and just, it looked wrong. I'm used to driving around mountains made of rock with some shrubs and cactus and stuff. The occasional Joshua tree, things like that. But this was just like fuzzy dunes. It looked weird. And the roads were like, I don't know how to, like, I mean, I'm just going to say it. Once we crossed into California, which is only, it's like half of the trip from like Phoenix to the border and then border to Anaheim. It's basically 50-50. Once we crossed into California, we spent almost the entire time until we got to the hotel bitching about California, between the weird, like, shit like the way they labeled the exits and signs and things on the freeway. The crazy ass drivers. I'm in Phoenix. I know crazy ass drivers. We're notorious for it. It's kind of one of the things. Everybody drives crazy in Phoenix because everybody drives crazy in Phoenix. That's just it. It's like, if you're going to be a shy driver, not the place for you. But everybody in California drive like assholes. Phoenix, they're all crazy. In California, they don't give a fuck about you. They just drive like assholes, apparently. I got alarms going off, sorry. But we were just like... And then once we get there and it's smoggy as fuck, and we're just like, seriously? We're like, every stereotype we ever heard about California, we seemed to encounter on this drive. And we're like, are you shitting me? We're like, I always thought the smog in California and LA and all that was an exaggeration. Apparently not. We got there and we could smell it in the air as soon as we got like out of the immediate desert area. Once we got anywhere into civilization, all we could smell was the smog and the pollution and exhaust and everything. We're like, if this is what Californians live in, it's no wonder they always think the world is going to end. They're living in Mad Max pollution level shit here. We're like, move somewhere, go somewhere else, people. Anyway, sorry. If there's one thing that's universal, Arizona does not like California, and I am a child of my state. Sorry. But never mind that the taxes and the fucking prices of everything. I had to fill up my car. I was bitching about it being about $4.69 when I left Phoenix. That sucked. I realized my brother in Texas is paying like, they're complaining about $3 a gallon. Fuck you. But I had to fill up before we got there. Or like somewhere, we were like maybe 20 minutes away from the hotel, but wasn't going to make it. Anyway, I had to fill up at $7 a gallon. It cost me $100 to fill up my tank. That is ridiculous. Now, if I'm filling up my truck, that makes sense. I've got a 36-gallon tank on the truck, or 2 tanks, but you know what I mean. I got 36 gallons to pump on the truck. I'm pumping 15 gallons. It should not cost me $100. That's ridiculous. Fucking California. Goddamn. For the most part, the trip was meh. It was okay. Minus the smog and shit in California. And then when we actually got into Anaheim and my wife switched her GPS to some English guy. And all I kept thinking was, man, your GPS guy is dumb. Because her GPS guy, and we have the same phone. So theoretically, it should be the same app, but for whatever reason, her GPS is dumb and would not tell us about an exit until about 5 seconds before the exit. If you've ever seen that episode of Drake and Josh where they get the discount GPS system, is like, turn left in 5 feet. And then it's like that. That was basically what her GPS kept doing. So I kept like barely making turns, not knowing, am I supposed to be going left or am I supposed to be going right? Where am I going? Because GPS was being dumb and wasn't telling us anything. But we did discover a few fun things. If you're familiar with our rock tumbling hobby that we got into last Christmas time, we actually ended up stopping in Quartzsite, Arizona for lunch. And all I could say is your town is named after a type of rock. And every business in this town is about rocks. I think we might have to take a trip to Quartzsite at some point to acquire some rocks. We also passed a volcano, which, if you didn't know, there are actually 3 volcanoes in the general Phoenixy area somewheres. But there are actually a lot of volcanoes out here and magma mines and things like that. So it's kind of funny learning these sort of things because we have a running gag with the boys. Every time they pointed a mountain, it's like, Dad, is that a volcano? Mom, is that a volcano? I'm like, yep. Just if you keep asking if it's a volcano, we're going to say yes. This time it actually was. And the only reason we found it was because we saw what we thought was a fire We just saw the smoke and steam and like, that looks really weird over there. What is that? And we get over there and we're like, it looks like something's on fire. Like there's a building on fire, or is there a factory or something over there? And we pulled it up on the GPS and say, oh, it's a volcano. And I guess it's erupting or something, which was the craziest fucking thing, that we passed a volcano in Arizona, in kind of like the middle of fucking nowhere, Arizona, on our way to Disneyland. I could not have, that was not on my bingo card for this trip. But yeah, it was just kind of the funniest thing. You wouldn't think about it. And I didn't think, honestly, that I was going to be able to fill an entire 10 minutes of talking about the road trip. But then I think about it, and it's like, between Quartzsite and the volcano and bitching about California, because fucking California. And I'm sure somebody listening right now is in California and they're cursing me because Arizona. Oh, well. Fucking California. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Tomorrow, we will be at Disneyland because we will be getting into our first day formally at Disneyland and what that felt like. Yeah. I will say this now. You should really plan things out ahead of time. Until then, oddballs, thank you and good night.